Okay, good morning, everyone. We have 9 o'clock. I am going to be your host today. My name is Shaylee Bradley, and I'm a part of the Field Crops Focus Group Steering Committee. So we'll go ahead and get started with Darcy. She is going to go first today.
I really don't have much because there's not much in the ground on the disease side of things. Otherwise, it's going to be quiet until we get a lot more crops in the ground. I guess if things went out early, they might start to see some stands coming up, and seedling disease issues might be an thing that might be going on. So those samples could be sent into the clinic, I guess, if anybody's seeing anything early on. But right now, otherwise, pretty quiet on the disease front until we get crops out of the ground.
Thank you, Darcy. Next, we have Austin Pearson with our weather update.
Good morning, everybody. So looking at the overall conditions in the last, uh, since April 1st, looking at this, we've been slightly below normal temperature wise, especially across the northern part of the state. And you can see that's pretty consistent across the minimum and maximum temperatures. And really the maximum temperatures were anywhere from 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit below normal for the extreme northern part of the state. And so that's why we've seen a bit of the delayed phenological conditions with some of our perennial crops that were out. We had rapid warm up early down south, and then things kind of stalled out a bit with that. But overall, really not too uncommon for this time of year. We did have quite a few freeze and frost advisories earlier in the month, uh, which that risk is always there between now and the mid part of May. But overall, things have warmed up a bit and removed quite a bit of the freeze and frost risks across the state. Looking at the precipitation, uh, we do have quite a bit of areas across the state that were above normal in precipitation. And a lot of that goes back to that one event that we had a couple weekends ago. We did have additional rainfall over the weekend that didn't quite amount as much as what was forecasted. We had some areas in west central Indiana that were looking at up to upwards of 4 inches of precipitation. But overall, looking at that, we do have quite the spread of precipitation across the state up for the monthly totals. April 1st to 21st up here in northern Indiana, 2 to 3 inches of precipitation. You can see that that was anywhere from 0 to 2 inches above normal and 100 to 125% of normal. Most of that heavier precipitation down south, though, looking at along the Ohio River, we had 10 to 12 inches of precipitation with some areas uh, toward the beginning of the month that had received up to 14 inches of precipitation. So quite heavy precipitation down there, flooding events and localized flood warnings as a result. Uh, since then, though, uh, the winds have really helped dry things out quite a bit. Now, prior to this previous rain event that we experienced, we did have quite a bit of field activity that was happening, especially up in north central Indiana, a lot of anhydrous ammonia going on. And in addition to that, I saw some tillage and some additional crop planting, soybeans at this point in time. But um, looking at that though, soil moisture conditions have been a bit elevated and have thus made progress very difficult at times. And we're back to being wet again with the recent precipitation and slowed progress down quite a bit. Going back to the temperatures, our modified growing degree days, base 50, ceiling 86. Looking at this, we do have accumulations that are well below normal, anywhere from 10 units down in southern Indiana all the way to 50 units up in northern Indiana. And, again, with these being temperature based, I'm not too surprised by seeing this. But with the warmer spell that's coming up, we'll be able to catch back up with this moving into the short term period. 7 day average soil temperatures. So if you go to our Purdue Mesonet page, we do, if not yet already this morning, we've added a new product to our Mesonet site, and you can go and get 2, 4, 8, and 20-inch soil temperature in looking at those 7 day average soil temperatures. And so with this, I wanted to show you the 2-inch and 4-inch depths at this point in time, and this is as of this morning, so the previous 7-day period. Uh, all of our soil temperatures at the 2 and 4 inch depths are above 50 degrees. And so you can see up here at Penny Purdue Ag, 51.9 degrees at 2-inch and 4-inch depth. And then slightly lower at the 4-inch depths, which is a bit, it's expected as it takes a bit longer for that to uh, to move up
Austin,
in temperature. Yes, sir.
are those bare or covered?
These are covered.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So these are the covered soil temperatures. Looking at the soil moisture, we obviously have, we dipped back down over the previous 7-day period, but then the rains again this last weekend really elevated things again. So moisture has been driven up and thus reduced field activity as a result. And so that's something that we're considering moving forward. Despite the topsoil conditions, we do have some lingering dryness. We could be in the abnormally dry here in West Central and Central Indiana for quite a while. I did push to hopefully get this removed a couple weeks ago, but we did have some lingering dryness in the 90 and 120-day products that we have. So, again, this can be signaled as we're going out of drought. Ponds, some areas are still low in these areas, but stream flows and soil moistures look fairly decent for this time of year, given the overall scenario and how dry we were last fall. Looking at the outlook, though, we do have additional rain chances coming in. I heard that there's some chances tomorrow, Wednesday, and then again Friday. But overall, the quantitative precipitation forecast through the Weather Prediction Center doesn't show as much as what they were showing last week at this time. And so we do have up to about 3/4 of an inch of precipitation. So we typically get about an inch of precipitation a week at this time of year. And so that's something that will be helpful. That not overly saturating things and allowing a little bit of windows to hopefully get out and do some things with that. The thing that will help this though is the above normal temperatures that are expected and help with drying out. And our above normal temperatures have been accompanied with pretty significant winds during this last month, and so that's probably something that's going to continue. We do still have elevated chances for above normal precipitation through the latter part of the month, so the 27th through May 1st. You can see that here there's a 50 to 60% chance of above normal precipitation over northwestern Indiana and 33 to 40% over southeastern Indiana. And then looking at the 8 to 14 day, still continued chances for above normal temperatures. So that's going to be good. And again, I've been looking at some of the models and really not seeing a whole lot of threat for freeze risk, at least through that first week of May at this point in time. And then elevated chances for above normal precipitation. And so one of the things that's a bit concerning at this point in time is that there's a slight risk for, heavy precipitation over southwestern Indiana the latter part of the month, given that things are already very saturated down in that area. Still a lot of low level flooding that's over that particular region. So what this is going to do to planting progress is probably going to continue to delay it. And so that's just something to keep an eye on at this point in time. But I don't think we have a 2019 on our hands at this point in time yet, but something to keep an eye on moving forward. Looking at the monthly temperature outlook, equal chances for above normal or below normal temperatures. I do think we'll probably end up a bit above normal considering the remainder of the month forecast. But overall, with precipitation, slightly elevated chances for above normal precipitation. Now, shifting our focus into the seasonal temperature outlook, elevated chances for above normal temperatures, and then equal chances for above or below normal precipitation. So just don't have quite a firm grasp on that. The El Nino Southern Oscillations looking to go back to neutral conditions for the summertime. And so it could bring equal chances for that above normal or below normal precipitation. With that, I will pause, stop for questions. Otherwise, I will pass it back for continued information from our specialists.
Right. Moving on down the list, we'll go to the agronomy department. Dan Quinn, do you want to start off with an update for corn?
Not a lot on the corn front other than stuff has started. We planted our first research trial in West Lafayette last week, planting date trial. So ground conditions have started to shape up. There's been rain in areas, but um, stuff has started to move all the way from southern portion of the state all the way up to the northern part of the state as well. Some of those areas have missed recent rains. Looking at USDA came out yesterday for the state. I think we're about 3% planted. So about 2 percentage points behind the 5-year average, but I think we're right in the realm. I think you look at today, tomorrow, Thursday, you're going to see a lot of movement around the state in a lot of areas. A lot of farmers I work with are either have planted or getting ready to plant this week. I know there's a lot more soybeans that have been going in the ground too, but some corn going in all over the state. Big thing is again just kind of reiterating a lot of what I've talked about last time we met and also just this time of year, right, is checking conditions. Conditions play a huge role in what the plant does and how it emerges and how it establishes itself and how the roots developed. So many different factors can go into play when things go wrong this time of year. So paying attention to the conditions, prioritizing fields that have better conditions. I know it's easier said than done, and a lot of farmers get pretty jumpy this time of year. But again, I always reiterate probably the number one call I get this time of year is just after emergence and the stand looks terrible. And 9 times out of 10, it comes back to the conditions that it was planted in and also the root health and root development. So being mindful of those things, paying attention to, if stuff's planted in a little bit cooler soils. I know maybe Darcy talked about seedling diseases. That's always to be mindful of this time of year. But again, nothing major in terms of my big update, just because we're getting started, right? So the stuff gets started. We'll provide some more updates as the crop starts moving out of the ground and we start getting a look at what conditions are, what the health is, stuff like that. In terms of calls recently, just I've had a few calls just, getting ready to plant. And then, there's always the question if we run into conditions with soil crusting and get heavy rainfall right after planting that can cause that. But, nothing major reports yet. We're just getting started. So we'll see. Hopefully the next time we meet, we can start, assessing some stuff coming out of the ground and what it looks like around the state and a lot of the progress. But big thing right now is planting is beginning all over the state. So I expect that number to probably drastically increase the next time we meet. But we'll see with the rainfall and where things go from here. But nothing major for me yet. We'll wait and see when the crop starts coming out of the ground and planting progresses and get a better look at what things look like and any issues that pop up from there. So that's all I have. Nothing crazy this at this point. So
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. All right. Let's talk about soybeans with Shaun Casteel.
Soybeans. So we are at 3% beating corn again. So beans rule and corn rules, as I like to say. So no, planting progress, definitely we've seen over the years that the tendency has been to go to the beans. We got some of those in last week as well. And this should be a really good week for that. We think about what rains missed us last weekend. Really good. We've got plots going in up at Penny today. A good handful of plots will be planted local. So things are going to progress things in terms of the growers as well. I go back and I want to echo the varieties and the lots that we need to be checking those. Again, I've got 80% to 90% germ lots. The industry is probably 80, 85. There's a fair amount out there. So just be mindful of that. Again, with your growers as they're growing up, they're pushing this planting date this week, looks good. But if you can pick varieties that have a higher germ score or higher vigor rating, definitely a spot to play those. Certainly seed treatments coming to mind as Darcy's already been on the call here. So those are the things I want to consider. Again, germ scores are low. We'll need to up that seeding rate. So if you're a 140, probably going to a 160 kind of thing. If you're a 90% to 80% germ. Crusting's always a potential issue. I'll echo some of the things that Dan's already talked about. We have a little bit harder time between the two crops getting up out of the ground. So, but at this point, I think if we're seeding at those rates, we'll be fine with what's in the forecast. A 3/4 inch rain for the following week doesn't seem too bad with temperatures that aren't going to be crazy high to cause that crusting condition. As we look to this, I think about what Austin talked about with lower temperatures in the north. I've got some CRI trials and some samplings across the state, and it does seem like CRI is a little bit behind on some of our stuff. I think that's matching up with what Austin's talking about in terms of lower temps. You'll see it also in the wheat in terms of just advancement of the wheat. We're about 30% joining for the state. So I think that's coming into, again, a little bit of this cooler trend. So not say that it's a bad thing. It's just a matter of where the state of the crop is, both CRI for that matter and wheat. As we look to the coming days, good temperatures for burn down applications. Again, we'll hear hopefully some on the wheat side with that, and any field activity. If a person's making a choice between planting soybeans timely, getting out if they're playing the sulfur game for fertility or tillage or anything like that, I want to plant the soybeans timely. Again, the sulfur side of things can be played afterwards if need be, but this is a nice little window we're getting. Hopefully the winds calm down. We have had some pretty nasty high wind conditions. That's something to be mindful of when we spray. Just because there's not crops out there doesn't mean that we shouldn't be mindful of wind conditions. And so thankful that we've got a little cooler and lower wind on the forecast. So with that, not much going on, but just on the edge of go. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
We'll move on to Marguerite Bolt with a hemp update.
Good morning, everyone. So you may have seen in the Pest and Crop newsletter last week, I had an article with the links to our hemp seminar that we hosted in late March. So if you were not able to get on to that online or attend in person and you'd like to watch those videos, they're about 20 minutes long, so they're pretty easy to digest. And I think they would be of interest to a lot of folks. And feel free to share those with, stakeholders, growers around the state. Right now, same thing as corn and soybeans. Not that we have nearly the amount of hemp that has ever gone into the ground, but it's really early for us. We have some growers participating in on-farm trials that will be receiving seed this week and next week, but they likely won't plant until mid to late May. If you have any growers in your counties or prospective growers that have questions about licensing and the application process, feel free to direct them my way, or have them reach out directly to the Office of the Indiana State Chemist. Happy to, come down to the office and assist if necessary, but also can schedule virtual meetings to go through that process, if there are anybody that have questions or need assistance. I don't have a lot else to update. We'll be putting our trials in likely in mid-May, out at the agronomy farm, and then we'll update from there.
Thank you so much. It looks like Elysia Rogers is on. So Elysia, do you have any update for forages?
Yes, good morning. Hi. Not really, not much from what was reported a couple of weeks ago. We still have forages starting to grow. So I imagine hay production and such will probably start within the next month or so for especially more of our southern counties. Just a reminder for those of you that have had flooding, just making sure that we're walking those pastures, walking those hay fields, because silt and debris can definitely be an issue as we're feeding our animals fresh in the pasture or harvested forages as well. So that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I've got
All
a
right.
quick question.
Yeah,
When do we need to be looking out for alfalfa weevils? Is that coming up soon?
Yeah, yep. So that would be probably within the next few weeks. I would be start scouting for those. Again, depending on what the airstreams and such bring in. But I would imagine within the next 3 weeks or so, I would start scouting for those. Especially for northern Indiana. Southern Indiana might be a little bit sooner.
all right. We'll go to Lyndon Kelley with irrigation.
Thanks. Not much to say on irrigation. We hope that there's a nice even rainfall for the whole spring, but because 2 out of the last 4 years we've had dry spells where it benefited us to irrigate in or water in herbicides and help germinate. We put out an article. You should see that today or so. Hit the popular press, and I'll send it to all the Purdue channels here. But it's a generalized article about if it's dry, use irrigation to help your herbicides, your soil applied herbicides get activated. It's up to you guys to try to modify that. If you have a dry spell and see a benefit for your growers, we need to do something to bring that to their attention at the time. It's hard to motivate people when your fields are too wet to thinking about watering in herbicides. The major reason when we survey irrigators that they do not use their systems to help germinate seeds and water in herbicides is that their systems are not ready to run yet. So if there is a rainy day, maybe it's worth suggesting, is that system ready to run? We go from that. And then the last thing that's out there, we're revamping our wheat and small grains irrigation. You'll see that before we meet again, but right around the 1st of May. Surprisingly, there's a tremendous benefit in wheat and small grains and small grain forages supplying the water during May if we don't have that inch and a half of rainfall. And we're seeing that a lot with the dairy producers that are producing feed under contract and have these rye fields that they're planning on harvesting on the last week of May. Sometimes a couple inches of irrigation water makes another ton of feed. So those are all things to look forward to. If any questions about irrigation, please give me a call.
Let's go to botany and we'll talk with Tommy Butts about weeds.
All right. Weeds are always fun. So I guess I'll start with wheat real quick. I've gotten a couple calls on that front. A lot of winter annual junk that we're dealing with there. Pennycress, shepherd's purse, some other things. I'm sure maybe down in southern Indiana, there's some ryegrass or other things we're dealing with. The main thing is on that front is, watch our temperatures with all our herbicides for that matter. Southern Indiana looks like they're quite a bit warmer. They shouldn't have as many concerns as we move to northern Indiana, though. We're still catching some pretty cold nights and not super warm during the day. So just make sure we're kind of above that 55 degree temperatures when we're trying to spray and we're not freezing at night or getting a heavy frost or something. So just watch out for that. On the wheat front, the other thing I was going to mention is we normally have quite a few good options, especially for broadleaves in wheat. But the thing I just want everybody to consider is if guys are going to try and double crop soybeans, right, or plant back in with soybeans after they get the wheat off or something, quite a few of our wheat options have a significant plant back to soybeans, especially if you can't get STS beans or anything else. And so we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot by using one of those ALS inhibitors that kills our weeds, but then stops us from planting our double crop soybeans. So just keep an eye out on those plant back intervals when we're trying to manage some of that stuff. Outside of wheat for our normal crops, the main thing I'm going to say there is let's just make sure we're convincing everybody to not plant too far ahead of our sprayers. I've already gotten a call or two on, we got planted at the end of week last week and caught the rain and we didn't get our pre out. What do we do now? We have weeds up, we have weeds coming. What do we do? Our soybeans going to be cracking, is our corn going to be out of the ground, etc. Let's try and avoid that as much as possible. Get that sprayer right behind the planter so we can get our heavy duty residuals out. They're going to do a bulk of the work for us. Just looking at some emergence patterns and things in the state, here in the middle of the state in northern Indiana, we're working into our ragweed time. Our first emergence, we're not to the peak emergence for ragweed quite yet. Southern Indiana, we're well past our peak emergence for ragweed, so I'm sure y'all are seeing that pop up a whole bunch down there. When it comes to like water hemp, we're still quite a ways away from our first emergence up here, central to northern Indiana. Southern Indiana, we're starting to creep up there. I know in the next week or so, you're going to be, 75, 80 plus here for a few days. You may hit the water hemp emergence window within the next week or so, too, the beginning of May here. So that might be starting to rear its ugly head already, too. So just be aware that we're hitting those windows and we're selecting residual herbicides and everything else based on those weeds. So with that, I think that's kind of the main highlights I'd say at this point.
Thanks, Tommy. Let's see. We will go down to entomology with Christian.
Okay, good.
Perfect.
All right. So this will be quick. I'll just talk about a couple of insect situations potentially that will be interesting. Of course, we don't have a lot planted, but there was a discussion about forages and alfalfa in particular. So I do want to talk about alfalfa weevil. And this is a site that many of you may have seen. This is out of Iowa State University, and this takes the climate data and applies different filters for different growing degree days, insect developmental thresholds. And so you can see I've got a drop down here, and I've got Indiana selected. You can look at whatever state you want, switch state, and then you have select pest. I've got alfalfa weevil selected. And the reason I'm showing this is because anybody can go anytime and look at these data. It's a very useful site. So if you've looked at pest and crop, you've seen these maps. This is where this comes from. And thank you to Austin Pearson for cluing us into the new power of this site. So when we talk about alfalfa weevil, we see the map of Indiana here, and the key numbers are up here in the top left. January 1st, they start accumulating degree days, and of course, nothing accumulates below, in this case, 48 degrees Fahrenheit. So until you have a 48, you don't count a growing degree day. Nothing happens. The alfalfa weevil will sit there until that starts. At 300 accumulated above 48, you get egg hatch and 575 peak larval feeding. So look at Indiana here, and you can see for the majority of the state, 2/3 of the state, at least, maybe 3/4, we've got egg hatch. But when you see the peak larval feeding is when you can, and that's southern Indiana down here, when you can easily see what's going on, and the tips will be all tattered and torn up. And that's when most people clue in, oh, it's alfalfa weevil, time to treat them. Okay, so southern Indiana for sure, and probably by the end of the week, we'll be up past the Indianapolis area, going south to north. So alfalfa weevil are mostly hatching, and when the heat's there, they develop very, very quickly. And the only other thing I want to mention about them is we've talked in the past about pyrethroid resistance. It's not been documented in Indiana. It's been documented in many other states, especially those with more alfalfa. So at least rotating your pyrethroids, but rotating in non-pyrethroids is recommended if you do a lot of treating of alfalfa and alfalfa weevil. Okay, that's the first pest I wanted to talk about. The other one I wanted to mention is the seed corn maggot. And that's a fly, and you can see the growing degree days here are quite a bit lower, 39. It's a cold hardy insect. It's called the seed corn maggot, but it feeds on pretty much anything. It feeds on soybeans, it feeds on corn, it feeds on weed seeds, it feeds on decaying organic matter. And so Shaun, Casteel mentioned we have 3% of soybeans planted ahead of corn. There are not a lot of crops in the ground, but in a year where we had more soybeans planted and we had let's say, a very early planting and then a cold spell, those beans may be at risk, because if you look here, we had 360 peak adult emergence. It's already happened. Those adults start looking to lay eggs, but we're almost at 781 in about half of the state, when those maggots pupate. So what that means is by the time we plant our corn and most of our soybeans, seed corn maggot won't be an issue because they'll either be pupating or they will be new adults and the temperatures will be such that seed corn maggot can't really get a foothold. It's a cool weather pest that can't overcome a healthy and growing soybean or corn plant. So barring some environmental catastrophe where we get very cold temperatures after planting, it could happen, but it's not very likely. Most of our flies will have been and gone by the time those crops come up and start growing. So that's the other early season one that we kind of talk about fairly frequently is seed corn maggot. So I want to mention that since as I looked on this website, you can get those numbers too. Okay, that's all I had. Any questions?
Thank you, Christian.
Okay, you're welcome.
Not our next scheduled call is on May 6th at 9 a.m. Thanks a bunch.